Honkai Star Rail has changed a lot since its initial launch, and the main reason for that is new characters, but also there's been tons of new gear, different methods to get different items that can help you with endgame content, more endgame content added to the game, and actually I shouldn't have Zillow on the screen for this at this point, should I? Here guys, here's proof that this is a guide for the year 2025, wow. Anyways, I've been playing HSR since CBT2, so I've seen the entire evolution of the game. I've cleared all the endgame content on both paid and free-to-play accounts, and I know the best way to progress in order to have the strongest account possible. And today, I'm gonna be sharing that with you. This video will include information like what the best characters to invest in are for newer players, how to actually go about progressing your characters, how to not get walled in endgame content, how to pull smarter, not harder, and also relic and gearing tips for anyone who's new to the game or people coming back that might just need a refresher. That being said, my name is Braxophone, but you can call me Brax, and here is my guide to Honkai Star Rail in 2025. It's been a while since this game released. In fact, in a few months, it will be about 2 years since the launch of Honkai Star Rail. So if you're brand new coming into this game, there's a lot of information for you to catch up on, but don't worry. In this section, I'm going to go over all of the characters that are worth investing in from a completely brand new free-to-play player standpoint. First off, you'll probably have noticed that you have about 3 characters available to you after you start the story. It's going to be your Preservation March 7th, your Physical Trailblazer, and your Hunt Wind Dawn Hung. And if you started this patch during 3.0 when this video is made, you get a free little skin for March. Wow, very cute. It's unfortunate that this is the only time you'll probably ever use Preservation March. These 3 characters are all going to get replaced later on, but they can do the bulk of the work to get you through the story, at least at the beginning. It's not a bad idea to invest in these characters, but I will say it's not super necessary, at least not these versions of them. Leveling up the Trailblazer and March 7th isn't going to hurt because when you switch their elements later on, their level persists, so you will still get all of that work that you put in back out. But you're also going to be given some characters on a silver platter. You're going to get Natasha, Asta, Serval, and Herta just by playing through the story. Asta is given through the free pull that they teach you what the gacha is with, and then Natasha is going to be your dedicated healer that they give you for free. Serval is just a good AoE unit, and Herta is a great unit that you will actually be using in endgame later on once you get to the endgame. There's a game mode called Pure Fiction where this character, Herta, absolutely decimates enemies. But on top of that, she also makes farming calyxes pretty easy early on in the game, so she's not a bad character to build, but you don't have to build her right off the bat just because you might not end up using her right away. And then after all of these characters, these are the 7 they give you for free, and then after that, you can get 4 more for free by completing challenge content, and those are going to be Yukong, Qingxue, Zhiyi, and Lynx. Lynx is a second dedicated healer for you, and honestly, Lynx is pretty dang strong, especially when paired with destruction units, because her whole thing is that she can add more taunt value to destruction and preservation units. Now, I'm going to keep it real. A lot of these units you may not end up using, especially once you actually pull on the gacha, but they can be helpful early on, and I'll tell you, when they released these characters, they were pretty good. A trend that you'll notice in Honkai Star Rail is that there is a little bit of power creep going on with new units getting stronger than the older units. You can tell this by the top DPS now being significantly stronger than the top DPS back then. But that doesn't mean that every pull and every decision you make is completely irrelevant, because there are smart ways to pull and smart characters to pull, and I will go over those later on in the video. Later on in the story, you're going to be getting multiple versions of March 7th and Trailblazer, and these are worth investing in for sure. As a heads up, these are like minor story spoilers. So versions that you have are the Destruction, which is the one they give you right at the beginning of the game, Preservation, which you unlock after doing a certain portion of the story, Harmony, which you get later on in the story, and then Remembrance, which I haven't done the story for, so editor, do your thing. In my opinion, Preservation MC does end up being pretty strong for you in a lot of cases when you're playing through the story and things like Simulated Universe. However, they get easily replaced by Harmony MC and the Remembrance MC that you obtain later on, and you will likely want to be using these characters later on once you actually have access to some of the newer premium units. Trust me, they make this game really easy. On top of that, March 7th also has her second form, which is going to be the Hunt March 7th. Now, this March 7th is probably going to be one of the best DPSs on your account, even if you pull for premium units, because she is meant to be a sub DPS. She's a second DPS character that you throw into your team for dual DPS teams, and she does work. It's actually insane to look at Danheng, who is the free DPS character they give you, and then Hunt March and see the difference in damage output that these two characters bring. Hunt March is incredibly powerful and a character that you will absolutely want to be building. And for that reason, because Trailblazer and March do have usable versions, I would recommend leveling them up to 80. You don't need to really mess with their traces too much before you actually unlock their different versions, because when you switch versions, their traces will reset. But their level will stay the same either way, and I highly recommend investing in these two characters. And later on in the game, you're definitely going to want Herta to be invested in for pure fiction. Beyond the free-to-play units that I mentioned, there are also some other 4-stars that are worth investing in. I know there's a lot of premium 5-stars in this game, but there are good 4-stars as well. When you get access to this character, Gallagher, I highly recommend building him. There is a 5-star character named Lolcha who is known for his insane healing output and his enemy buff removal. Now, Gallagher doesn't necessarily remove an enemy buff, but what he does do is give your team HP back when you attack an enemy that's been debuffed by Gallagher, which is almost in line with what Lolcha does. The difference is that Lolcha's isn't a debuff on the enemy, it's just always there when his field is active. But Gallagher is more or less the free-to-play version of Lolcha, and he's a very powerful healer, and in break teams as well, he can dish out quite a bit of damage. Overall, skill point positive character, which does matter a lot in this game, and he's a very powerful 4-star, especially with his Eidolons. Another good 4-star to invest into is Pela. Now, I know we have a lot of premium units that are taking up the slots that Pela uses, but Pela never stopped being good. Pela is a character that can remove enemy buffs with her skill, apply ice resistant shred for your ice DPS characters with one of her Eidolons, and also AoE defense shred the enemy team. Now, when you pair Pela up with this light cone that you will likely get at some point during your runs, Resolution shines as pearls of sweat, you can actually apply another defense shred. Sometimes buffs on all your characters aren't enough. Sometimes you need to be able to shred the enemy defense and apply debuffs to them instead of buffing yourself, and that's what Pela allows you to do. She's a very powerful character and honestly pretty timeless. Another top tier 4-star is Tingyun. Now, there are less people using Tingyun than there used to be, but that's not because Tingyun fell off. It's because the metas haven't been very favorable for Tingyun. However, Tingyun works with a majority of hyper carry DPS characters because she applies huge attack buffs, she's SP positive in a majority of teams, and she has an ultimate that gives damage bonus and energy to an ally. Giving energy to an ally is incredibly strong, and many characters can take full advantage of that. Plus, with Eidolon, she gives even more energy, and overall, I cannot recommend building Tingyun enough. She is so powerful. There are other 4-stars that can be worth building for your account, depending on who you have, but those are the main ones. Gallagher, Pela, and Tingyun are too crazy, and of course, I already mentioned Herta is very strong, specifically in pure fiction. Before you go and build everyone, I need to give you some investment tips so that way you don't brick your account and make everything take way longer than it needs to. Meet the Herta. She's not like the other Hertas. She is the Herta. She's actually, she's her. Let's say that you hypothetically pulled for this character, the Herta, on the 3.0 patch of Honkai Star Rail, the newest patch as of when I'm making this video, but probably not the newest by the time you're watching it. If you got her, you would have a powerhouse on your account, and you might be thinking, well, great, I'm gonna go build Herta alongside the rest of her team, so that way we can do the most damage possible. But wait, please allow me to stop you before you make what is possibly the biggest mistake of your Honkai Star Rail career. Horizontal investment is good after you have 2 teams already, but before you have 2 teams, you want to be vertically investing in your characters. What I mean by vertical investment is that you need to be taking one character and putting all of your effort into maxing them out so they can carry you through all of the content. Now, this does also apply to teams. You do want to build their entire team as well, but you want to focus on one character first. The reason is because how damage scaling works in this game and how investment works is that you're gonna see significantly higher increases in your overall damage the more investment you put in. I'm not talking like a 1 investment to 1 reward ratio. I'm talking like you put in all your investment and holy cow, you're decimating the entire enemy field. Your goal when you get a new character that you want to invest and build in is to completely max that character. If you level up the Herta, for example, and you get her all the way maxed out, her traces to level 10, you get her bonus abilities as well, you get her a good relic set, and you max out a light cone and her personal level, her damage is going to be absurd. However, if you leave her traces half-baked, if you bring them up to level 6 or something, the multiplier is going to be significantly less, and you're going to see less overall damage. Same thing applies to if you don't pick up her major traces, same thing applies to if you don't pick up these minor traces that also give damage bonuses. The same thing also happens if you don't give her an actually good set, although this one is a lot more negligible. I mean, you can still do damage with the rainbow set, but my main point is that you want to take one character and fully invest in them, because if you half bake a bunch of DPS because you're excited about playing them, if you go to level 6 traces on Jingyuan, if you go to level 8 traces on Boot Hill, and let's say you have level 5 traces on Himiko and level 9 traces on Kafka, your damage on all of them except for maybe Kafka because she's level 9 is bricked. You don't have to go to level 10 on every single character, but don't stop at 6. Make sure that you go pretty high investment. I would go to 9 if you can, personally, because traces do make a really big difference in your overall damage, and the same thing applies to your light cone level and your character level. You need to make sure that these are actually getting maxed out, otherwise you're missing out on base stats for the characters and for the relics to actually scale off of. Now, as far as Eidolons go, there also is an argument to be made for vertical investment on certain characters, like if you were to say Robin. For example, Robin's E1 gives you all-type res pen. If you don't know what that is, it means that you essentially can penetrate through 24% of enemy resistances, or in other words, you're ignoring 24% of the resistance when you're in the Concerto state, which is Robin's ultimate. This is a massive damage increase and can help you on multiple different teams. Now, if you're completely free to play, I wouldn't necessarily recommend going for Eidolons on characters because I do think having a bigger roster helps, but if you are going to go for Eidolons on characters, going for Eidolons on supports that can help many different teams tend to be a little bit more valuable than going for DPS Eidolons, especially if you're going to be pulling multiple DPS characters. There are exceptions to this because Herta's E2 is fucking broken. But all in all, take one character, uplift them, and fully build them, and then focus on your next big project, which should be filling out the rest of the teams for the characters. So let's say I built Herta. Well, now I need to make sure that I'm able to do the most damage possible with Herta. It's time to start building my supports. Let's take Remembrance MC, which I totally have and is totally on the left side of the screen. Investing in Remembrance MC means you're going to be increasing the true damage that Herta can deal. Once you've gotten your main sources of damage sort of upgraded as much as possible, that's when you can start really min-maxing your other characters. I'm going to be honest, maxing out healers isn't super necessary. Obviously, level them to 80, level their light cones to 80, but leveling their traces to max at level 10 isn't always super necessary. It's just kind of nice to do. The ones you really need to make sure you 100% are maxing out are going to be your DPS characters and any characters that provide buffs, but healers you can get away with. I would still recommend investing in them though. And then because Herta is a free-to-play friendly character, we can even throw Serval in there, which is a character that every single person will have, and Serval even doesn't need a ton of investment into her traces and stuff for this team to work. So we've now prioritized the main damage dealer that's going to help us carry through the entire game, Remembrance MC, and then we have the other two characters that don't need as much investment, but they're still invested in after the main two. Once that's done, you can move on to another team. Let's say you wanted to get the premium fart team. You wanted Fei Xiao, Topaz, Robin, and Aventurine. Well, start by building Fei Xiao's traces, and Topaz and Numby's traces come after. And same thing with Robin. You could choose between which one of these two you want to level up first, but you just want to make sure that your main source of damage is fully decked out. You want to make sure all their traces are as leveled as they can get. You don't have to take them to 10 because you might be missing some tracks of destiny, which is an item that you will run out of if you keep investing in multiple characters. But even just getting them to 9 is huge. If you take away only one thing from this video, it is that vertical investment will help you make it through most content in the game. You can brute force your way through a majority of it as long as you have a fully invested team that you've just kept stacking and stacking power level on. Now, if you want to know what characters are actually worth pulling for in 2025, let's go over that so you kind of have an idea. Pull smarter, not harder. This is the motto that every Star Rail player should live by. Look guys, it's a known issue that Honkai Star Rail has been power creeping. Now, whether or not it's something that actually drastically affects your account completely depends on the pull decisions that you made. If you're a 1.0 player, you're definitely having a harder time with the game than a player that starts in 3.0 because you've already used a lot of the in-game currency to pull for older units that are not as strong as newer units. Luckily for us, we haven't had any end-game content that completely shuts out all of the older characters. For example, Zilla was the first premium character that came out, and even though she's not as strong as some of the newer characters, she can clear the endgame content, albeit in a lot of cases she takes a way longer time to do it. This is why, in my opinion, it is better to invest in support characters and 1 or 2 really strong DPS and just try to brute force all the content with them. Then later you can pull on some other crazy DPS characters that come out, but really solidify your supports because those characters are the true evergreen characters of Honkai Star Rail. But first, before I tell you guys who you should be pulling on, I do want to give you a quick overview of what the actual gacha rates are and how this works. If you're new to gacha games, then probably most of the things I've said are completely in one ear out the other, so hopefully this can provide some clarity. The way the Honkai Star Rail gacha works is exactly the same way the Genshin Impact gacha works, save for the light cone. In Honkai Star Rail, you have a 0.6% chance to get a 5-star at any given moment. Every 10 pulls, you will get a 4-star or 5-star character, and at 90 pulls, you are guaranteed to get a 5-star. That's for the character banner. Now, if you're looking at the limited character banner, you have a 50% chance to get the limited character, the rate-up character, in this case, it's the Herda, and a 50% chance to get any of the standard 5-star characters. Those standard 5-star characters are Himiko, Welt, Bronya, Gepard, Clara, Yanqing, and Bailu. And if you're wondering which of these characters is worth going for, the answer for the past 3 years or so has been Bronya, but with the addition of Pure Fiction and Super Break meta, Himiko is an incredibly strong pick as well. So either one of these two characters can be very good for your account, especially if you're a newer player and don't have a ton of different characters on the roster yet. The rest of these characters are kind of just fine. Clara can find some value still these days. Gepard just doesn't really find a lot of use because everyone pulls Aventurine because he's so ridiculously strong, and Gepard is a bit of a hassle to actually use his shield, but he's not useless by any means. He's just a little bit more difficult to use than some of the newer units. Unfortunately, if this guy's your favorite though, I don't know what to tell you. And then Welt is my goat. He's my fucking goat. Typically what you want to do, because there's a 50-50 chance on this game, is if you're a free-to-play player and you're not swiping at all, you want to save up enough pulls to guarantee the character in a worst case scenario. This means saving up 180 pulls for worst case, but realistically, there's actually a mechanic that they don't tell you a ton about, or it just doesn't really make a ton of sense in the explanation. Your rates actually go up at 75 pulls. So once you hit 75 pulls on a banner, you hit what's called soft pity, and you are highly likely to get the character in any of the pulls after 75. So technically speaking, it's like 160 pulls you want to save up just to be safe. But if you're a 50-50 winner, or if you get a character early, more power to you. You have a bunch of extra pulls. The rate of 4-stars, in my opinion, don't really make a huge difference on whether or not you should pull for a 5-star on banner, unless the 4-stars are absolutely abysmal. Usually the 5-star is worth pulling for, even if the 4-stars are bad though, just because 5-stars in this game tend to be a fair bit better than the other options. Now, one other thing to know about is the light cone banner. This is essentially the same thing, except the pity is actually lower. The pity only goes to 80 instead of 90. Now, light cones in this game are actually pretty important for some characters. However, there's almost always 100% of the time a free-to-play alternative that will get you good results. Some light cones are very strong though, like the Herda's light cone gives you a skill point whenever you use their ult, in addition to some other bonuses. This is a really hard one to pass up, but as a free-to-play player, you can get away without getting character light cones like a majority of the time. You don't need them. They're just kind of nice to have. And then lastly, you also have your standard banner, and you'll also have a beginner's banner where you can roll for 5-stars. Now, the beginner banner that has up to 50 pulls, it only costs 8 pulls per 10 roll. I don't actually have it on my screen, so I can't show you. So editor, maybe you can do your thing. I don't know if you can find an image of it. It'll take you 40 standard Star Rail passes to actually hit that pity on the 50 banner, and I highly recommend doing it because it's a free 5-star character and it'll flesh out your roster. But if you want to choose a 5-star, once you get to 300 pulls on the standard banner, you can actually choose any one of these standard 5-star characters. And again, I recommend Bronya or Himiko for most players. Bronya is really good for hyper carry teams. She can action forward your units and cleanse them, so you can actually speed tune a character so they act first. Bronya acts and skills them forward, and then your character gets to act again. Himiko is just great with Harmony Trailblazer and Fugue. The Super Break meta makes her very strong. So you might be wondering, okay, Brax, well, what characters do I actually pull? Because I mean, if you look at this roster, there's quite a few characters. Well, I'm gonna break this down for you just to show you sort of what the best characters are, provably over time, that seem like they're not going anywhere. First off, some of the safest characters that you can pull for are sustainers. The reason is because the game honestly doesn't give you that great of sustainers for free. You can get Gallagher, who's a 4-star character, and he is really, really strong, but sustainers tend to not really go anywhere. Huohuo's been good for a while. Overall, she gives a huge attack buff and she gives energy to your entire team, so she's very strong overall. Aventurine has also been shown to be timeless. Aventurine can give out shields without even using his skill, and he also has buffs in his kit, and he also does a fair bit of damage for a preservation unit. Shields in this game are busted. He gives you effect resistance while you have your shields up too, so odds are you're probably not even gonna get stunned or anything. Another character who has seen a lot of value recently is Linkshot, especially when paired with the new character, the Herda, just because she can generate so much energy and so many opportunities for mem as well with the Remembrance Trailblazer. She also has frequent cleanses, really solid overall healing, and in Super Break teams, she even does a fair bit of damage herself. Overall, sustainers seem to be the ones that aren't going anywhere. People are even playing Fushuan still these days. Now with Memo Sprites, it's a little weird because now you're taking extra damage if your whole team gets hit, but a lot of the oldest units in the game that are still used today are characters that are just healers or shielders, and even Molcha still gets used. So these three are great pulls if you need a sustainer. In fact, I still believe everyone should have a Venturine on their account if they can. But you know what else is timeless? Your support characters. And recently, the best ones have definitely been Sunday and Robin. I'm not counting Remembrance MC because they're free. Sunday is like Bronya Pro Max Giga Super Ultra. Sunday can give energy to characters much like Tingyun. This is one of the things that made Tingyun super broken, and Sunday can just do it, so that's great. But he also has action forward just like Bronya. He also has a cleanse like Bronya, but his action forward also brings up summons, which buffs our general and all future Remembrance characters that do have summons by moving up their summons to be able to act immediately. On top of that, he also has crit rate and crit damage and damage percent buffs. Overall, he's a goat. He's nuts. And of course, his sister is also nuts because, you know, they're family. They gotta both be crazy good, I guess. She's great in double DPS teams and single DPS teams. The amount of buffs that she gives is absurd, and she does have an action forward on her ultimate. Robin's pull value is a little bit less now with Remembrance Trailblazer being able to action forward allies and also give them true damage and a huge crit damage buff, but that does not make Robin bad by any means, especially if you want to play dual DPS teams. She is too crazy for that to pass up, and she still shows herself to be one of the strongest Harmony characters in the entire game. Some people would even say the strongest. All in all, your sustainers and your timeless supports are some of the best pulls you can get. I do anticipate though, we're gonna get some more supports in Amphorius. So don't feel pressured to pull for every single one of these characters I'm listing. Even one or two of them will probably massively help your account, and we might get some better characters later that specifically work with the new meta. Speaking of meta, there's also some DPS characters that are pretty strong to pull for now. Now, I will say that they are less evergreen. If you take a character that's a DPS character and then you want to use them all the time in the future, it may be a little bit tougher to do that as the meta actually shifts. That's why pulling for supports is better. But if you are looking for a DPS to pull for and you're watching this guide before she goes away, the Herda is very strong and very free to play friendly. She can use Remembrance Trailblazer, which is free. She can use Serval, which is free, and your sustainer can be literally anyone. The Herda is an absolute powerhouse. She destroys endgame content, and she can be paired up with free to play characters, so she's a great investment and a great pickup right now. Being one of the top DPS that also works with 4 stars, that's nuts. Now, a lot of people are probably thinking, okay, well, what about Fei Xiao, right? Because she's one of the top DPS in the entire game. Well, Fei Xiao does have some 4 stars you can pair her with, like Hunt March 7th. However, to get the most damage possible out of Fei Xiao teams, you definitely need other premium units. Now, if you have like Robin, this is probably fine for you, but if you don't have Robin, you're definitely gonna feel that. Fei Xiao can be a good pickup, but you definitely wanna make sure that you're investing in some of the other 5 stars that go with Fei Xiao if you want to pull for her. Acheron is very much the same deal. If you want to get the most value out of Acheron, going for something like her Light Cone can be good, but also getting Jiao Shou is gonna be so big for you. Herda is just the most approachable DPS right now that also has the highest yield. Now, one last thing I want to talk about is the Super Break characters, Rappa, Firefly, and also Boot Hill, but I only have room to show 2 of them right now. Firefly even has been shown to be strong for quite a while, and if you pull for Firefly or for Rappa, as long as you have the right teammates, these guys can crush a lot of different kinds of content. But if you are going to pull Rappa, I highly recommend getting Fugue. You definitely don't need Fugue for Firefly, but Fugue is going to enable Rappa to be so much better, and Fugue even helps Firefly out as well, and frees up your Trailblazer to go help out other teams that might have Remembrance characters, or you can even play double Super Break with Fugue and Harmony Trailblazer. Ruan Mei is also a character that helps out a lot with the Super Break teams because she increases your break efficiency and she delays enemies from getting back up after they've been broken. If you're gonna get either one of these 2 characters on the left, I highly recommend getting one or both of the characters on the right, but they will be massively helpful, and in my opinion, they're pretty good investments. If you're looking to make the best DPS investments though, honestly, just waiting until you see a character that catches your eye that's free to play friendly, much like the Herda, can be a great way for a new player to really take off. Now, there's one last thing that I want to talk to you guys about if you're a newer player, which is gearing and investment in that gearing. I have some tips for you guys on relics. Let's get into it. There's a lot to think about when it comes to building characters with your relics and what relics you actually want to be farming. So my goal is to break this down and show you some of the best relics to farm for and how to choose what to actually level up. If you're new to Honkai Star Rail, your relics might look like this. They might be a little cooked. And that's totally fine, because honestly, it's not even super worth investing in your relics at a super low level. There is a baseline of investment that you can do, but it's not super necessary to go all out, at least not until you hit Trailblaze level 40. That's when I would start actually farming for relics and trying to get the right main stats, just because the rarity and the value of relics is actually locked behind your Trailblaze level and your world level along with it. When you get to level 40, you'll start being able to actually farm for the higher tier relics, and that's when it's worth spending your actual stamina on. But for now, with these green tier relics, you don't actually have to spend time enhancing them. I mean, look at this, right? Like, we don't have a lot of actual materials for this. Now, what you want to be focusing on is getting either set bonuses or just some decent main stats to help you carry yourself through the game. One fun fact is that flat attack is actually more valuable earlier on in the game, just because you don't actually have that high base stats for attack percent to scale off of. Now, this crit damage thing does virtually nothing for me. Look, I have 5% crit rate and I would get an extra 4% crit damage. It's not gonna really do much. The reason why I have a 4-piece set equipped is because the 2-piece is gonna give me 12% attack, and I'm getting 6% more speed from the 4-piece. At the beginning of the game, even if you don't level up your different pieces, it can be a really good idea to just try to match up set pieces. Another fun fact is pieces with break effect or set effects with break effect, and also break effect rope, which we don't even have the planar set and rope unlocked on this account, can be very valuable earlier on in the game because of how break effect actually scales. But if you try to take break effect into end game nowadays without it being like super break, you probably would struggle with a fair bit. It's just that if you are breaking enemies, you can use a break effect rope to cheese a lot of the content in the game. But in my opinion, one of the best things that you can do early on is focus on attack percent, the flat attack from your gloves, and damage percent. You're likely not going to actually get good crit value and good crit ratios until later on in the game, or unless you have supports that are giving you a ton of crit. Crit is a stat that you're going to farm in endgame to really up your damage. Most of the time you're not going to have it, so even just going straight up attack percent on most of your pieces is totally fine, at least for when you're earlier on in the game. Later on in the game, you're going to want to get some crit pieces, but I'll just kind of go over that in a bit. Let's say you're finally in the end game of HSR and you're finally starting to gear your characters with some of the best relics that you possibly can. Well, there's quite a few relics to choose from, but there are some relic domains, or caverns, I guess, that are generally good for most characters. And if not most characters, a lot of them. For example, for a lot of the newer characters and for support characters, the Cavern of Corrosion with Sacerdos Relived Ordeal and Scholar Last and Air Edition is great to farm. There's gonna come a time where you're probably just gonna be mixing 2-piece sets, like ones that give crit rate and ones that give speed. It's never a bad idea to mix 2-piece sets if you don't have all the right stats to get a good crit ratio, which I talk about in my guides a lot. That just means good crit rate to good crit damage to make sure that you're hitting crits a lot and that your crits actually do a lot. And both of these sets have great 2-piece sets, but they also have great 4-piece sets. For example, this 4-piece set, Sacerdos, lets you give your allies that are targeted by your skill or ultimate 18% crit damage, and it can actually stack up to 2 times. This set is incredible for supports. It's so good. It works on so many different characters. It says Sunday and it says Remembrance MC, but man, you can use Sacerdos on a lot of different characters. You can use it on Sparkle. You can use it on Bronya even. You can use it on Tingyun. Like, there's so many good characters that you can use this on. And if nothing else, a 2-piece speed bonus is really efficient. Speaking of efficiency, 8% crit rate for 2 pieces is fantastic, and you are going to be able to use this for a lot of different characters. The 4-piece is also good for a lot of characters. It increases damage dealt by skill and ultimate just by having the 4-piece, and when you use your ultimate, it increases the damage of the next skill by 25%. There's a lot of characters that do a majority of their damage with their skills, thus making this set actually really good. It does only say the Herda, but it's good on Jingliu, and it's honestly good on a lot of different characters, even if it's not their best in slot. This Cavern of Corrosion is easily one of the most efficient ones to farm. Now, if you're farming break teams, this set with the Windsoaring Valorous and the Iron Cavalry can actually be decent to farm for. The 4-piece for Windsoaring Valorous isn't going to be used by everyone, but there are some characters that can use it, but the 2-piece gives attack percent, and the 2-piece of this one gives break effect, with the 4-piece being the best option for super break. Another break effect set comes from Watchmaker, Master of Dream Machinations, or you can farm this 2-piece while farming the 4-piece Pioneer Diver of Dead Waters. This one gives you crit rate and increased crit damage, so it's pretty solid as well. These 3 Caverns of Corrosion aren't going to be the best for every single character, but they all have sets that can be usable on different DPS and different supports, and overall I feel like these are pretty good general ones to farm if you're just trying to fill out 2-piece sets or fill out specific sets for specific characters and want some extra on the side. Honorable mentions to Bath of Darkness, which has the follow-up set, and the Dot set. The Dot set you're probably not going to use much these days unless you're playing Dot, which I don't recommend pulling for in its current state. I hope I come to regret that in the future because I miss Kafka and Black Swan. The Quantum set's virtually good on every single character. We just hate this one, the Guard of Weathering Snow. And as for planar ornaments, there are a couple that are more efficient than others. In my opinion, Fruit of Evil, this one that has Rudolent Arena and Broken Keel, is actually the most efficient one that you could even farm, because like I said, a lot of characters, a majority of their damage comes from skill damage, and this one gives 8% crit rate. Assuming you actually get a decent crit ratio, you can get a free 20% skill damage and a free 8% crit rate, which is fantastic. Broken Keel is great on every single support. There are better sets for specific supports, but Broken Keel works on virtually everybody. Team ally crit damage increase is fantastic. Unfortunately, the rest of the planar ornament sets are kind of split, one really good one and one hyper specific one. For example, Lushaka is incredible because it increases energy regen for your character that you have it equipped to, and it also gives attack to the first ally in your lineup. And then the next one is for summon characters and doesn't really have a great effect except for characters with summons. I mean, you do get 16 crit damage, but like, it's not game changing. Durand is for follow-up characters, but Forge of Compagni Lantern, even though it is for break effect characters, it also is a speed increase, and this one can be generally good. So yeah, there's just a lot of these that are kind of split between good and like one really good set and one kind of hyper specific set. The only ones that aren't really super close to that are Rudolent Arena and this Broken Keel set one. But if you're confused on what characters to actually use these on, I highly recommend checking out my guide videos for whatever character you pulled. Lastly, I do want to go over what to look for when you're leveling relics. Relic leveling can be one of the most difficult things to do in Honkai Star Rail. The reason is because substats are completely random, and that randomness can really hurt your chances at getting good pieces. Here's an example of a good relic. This rolled 2 times into crit rate and 2 times into crit damage. This piece is actually really strong. But the only reason I have something like this is because I made a good decision when I was trying to actually choose which relics to level. So you might be wondering, well, Brax, how do I choose what relics to level? So let's take this ice damage boost Rudolent Arena piece. It only has 3 substats, but we're not going to worry about that because it does have double crit. This basically just means that we're only going to get 4 rolls, and we want at least 3 of them to go into crit rate or crit damage. If they don't, then we're going to stop rolling this thing. But let's see how it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and add to the next node level, see what our next substat is, and we got attack percent, which is actually really good. That doesn't mean I want it to roll into attack percent here. I want it to roll into crit, but if it rolls into attack percent, it's not the end of the world. Usually what I'm going to do here is I'm going to see what the next roll is. If this is flat defense, it's not looking good, but odds are pretty in our favor that it hits something good here. So boom, it goes into flat defense. Now here is where you have to make a conscious decision, because you still do have a chance for it to get 3 good rolls on the other substats, but by this point it's already pretty much bricked. If this wasn't a double crit piece, I probably wouldn't keep rolling it, but +9 doesn't really hurt. The only reason I'm being so stingy though is just because going super high up in level does cost more XP, so it becomes gradually less worth it the higher you go. So we didn't hit any crit here in 2 rolls. In my opinion, I don't finish rolling this. Now, if you have a reroll dice, you could just send it and risk it for the biscuit, but typically I only recommend using reroll dice on pieces that you have 5 rolls for, not 4, because using this there gives you an extra chance at a better roll. But here I would just stop leveling it to save my resources. You could shoot your shot and see if you get it, because if you just like need a piece, that's whatever. But in my case, I don't need it so bad that I'm willing to kind of brick my resources. Here I have an attack percent Firmament Frontline Glamoth. Now this set actually is very good in general, but usually you want a damage percent orb. Attack percent can be fine on some characters though, and it's not bad to have. So it is a 4-liner, it has double crit, it has 2 bad substats and 2 good ones. We're gonna hope it goes into the good ones. So let's go ahead and see how it goes. Level it up +3. And it hits defense once, but I'm not gonna quit there because we are gonna get a total of 5 rolls. So there's still odds of us getting crit. Let's go and roll to +6. And boom, there we go. So that's 1 crit roll. This gives me a little bit of hope. It is a lower roll, but that doesn't matter as much. It's still crit at the end of the day, and we're gonna take it. Now we're gonna go to +9. And this is really gonna determine if I want to keep going. But again, because it's 5 rolls, we can make exceptions. Let's see how this goes. We get a +9. And boom, it's another crit damage roll. This, in my opinion, is absolutely worth rolling another one into because we already have a majority in our favor. So we're gonna go ahead and take it to +12. Let's see how it goes. And crit rate got a roll as well. So that's huge. Right now we have 3 rolls, which is the majority of rolls in crit rate, crit damage. That, in my opinion, makes this piece really good already. I think getting 3 crit rolls is pretty dang good for a piece. See if we can make it 4. And we can't make it 4, but we did get 3 crit rolls on this piece, and honestly, overall, this is good crit value. This is a 30 crit value attack Glamoth Orb, and we're rolling with it. So you kind of just have to make these evaluations as you go to kind of choose whether or not it's worth to continue rolling, but overall, I would say if by +9, it hasn't hit the good stats that you're going for, the speed or the crit or whatever it may be, then you probably stop, but +9 is a pretty safe place to be. Anyways, I know this was a long ass video, but thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that this sort of information can be helpful to you guys in the future, especially for newer players who are looking to get into Honkai Star Rail. Man, this game has a lot of content for you to catch up to, and I know it can be overwhelming, but it is absolutely worth it. This game is a gem, and I absolutely love it. If you guys love Honkai Star Rail, make sure to follow me over on Twitch as well at twitch.tv/Brax, and follow the YouTube page as well. Subscribe to my YouTube page if you want to see other videos like this. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you next time.